Well, I was planning to speak on the subject of dogma, but and I probably will. But it's been rather a strange morning, so perhaps I'll just chat about some other things as well. I'm now around about 2 months into my cannabis cessation, and it's going well, I guess. I've kind of lost track of the number of days. I was counting days now. I probably could calculate it, but I think it's around about 2 months. And I don't feel any mm, yearning, burning to restart currently. But so it is. My mood has stabilized somewhat, although I've had a difficult few days as I was visited by my wife and a friend of hers from Italy, both of whom are in a very different philosophical place to me, and always have been. I guess I didn't know her friend before, but she was a very nice lady, and discussions were obviously, the word of God was always on the table, because any question, of course, for me, I always answer from the word of God as I understand it. And these two ladies were not at all interested. They hadn't read, neither have read the Bible, or seem any, they seem to view it as a hostile source of information. Of course, they are both radical feminists, and from this perspective, the Bible is seen as being just the pits, I suppose. But one of the one young lady told me after quite a long day, and I was rather tired, and she said to me, well, and I suppose frustrated at my continual just reference to the Word of God, she said the problem that she has with it is it's dogmatic. She says, I don't like the dogma of it. It's just, it's an unthinking, dogmatic position. I mean, she was nice about it. She was very pleasant, and I didn't really feel compelled to answer. I didn't have a ready answer at that moment, but the matter weighed on my mind, and obviously the way these things do, I turned it over, and I prayed about it, and began to think about this word dogma, and I looked it up in the dictionary, and I was interested to find, of course, we were speaking in Italian, so the Italian dictionary in particular referenced the Catholic faith as being one of the primary uses of this concept of dogma. And indeed, it is a set of principles, an official set of principles, as it were, and it is somewhat related to the Church, first and foremost to the Catholic Church, with their apostolic traditions, and I suppose, the variable positions assumed by the papacy. And so dogma is formed, but I believe it applies also to the Protestant Church, because of course so many churches, they will have their statement of faith. They have to some extent a position of dogma. Their articles of faith, or whatever they call them. The church I attended had some. I think the preacher was reluctant to make them sine qua non, but he certainly had some very dogmatic positions to present. And I've always found these things to be an obstruction to the Word of God. And I started thinking about the Bible. Well, I mean, is it a dogma? I think it isn't, because as I began to meditate on it, of course, the Bible was written by many authors. And, usually I would say a dogma, you would expect there to be a coherent body, a committee or something that all agrees together and comes up with some coherent set of principles. Well, the Bible, of course, is a coherent set of principles. I'm not uh, claiming it's not, but it's rather different, isn't it? Because there are so many perspectives in the Bible, and men and women have taken these perspectives and used them to form various different dogmas, um, which are often at odds with one another. I mean, the Baptists don't agree with the Presbyterians, and the Presbyterians don't agree with the Methodists, who don't agree with the Calvinists or the Lutherans or the Seventh-day Adventists, and so on and so forth. All of them, however, claiming to forge their position by basing it upon the Word of God. I'm excluding the Catholics for obvious reasons, because they've really abandoned the Word of God once they established the principle that the musings of the Pope would supersede, and various other completely unbiblical ideas. But yeah, we have all these different denominations, and of course currently there is a certain ecumenism, and churches are joining forces, but they're joining forces by abandoning really the Word of God, and really the rallying is around the concept of environmentalism and social justice and community care, and all these some of them very good things, I'm sure, but there's no real um, understanding of the Word of God, um, or only a very selective one. So I don't think it is true to say that our faith is a dogma, but the Bible is dogmatic. There are many different perspectives, even in the Gospels, of course. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John they all present different perspectives, although they are a coherent whole. But there are some quite extreme differences, and when you think about Job, and then Solomon and his writings, and so on and so forth, we find some very different perspectives in the Bible that don't seem to gel with the idea of an official dogma. And ultimately, of course, Christianity is about a relationship with Jesus Christ. And when you're in a relationship, you are not in any kind of a dogmatic set of principles. You're in a relationship with somebody, and it's a personal relationship. This is why I think one of the reasons why these churches become so tedious, because they try to impose some top-down understanding which comes from the pulpit or comes from the governing body, or the Jehovah's Witnesses have their councils and the elders and so on and so forth, and they set out certain principles. But having read the Bible many times and listened to different positions, I understand that there are many positions that can be argued, and people do argue them from the very Bible. Take the matter of eternal security, for example, which, personally, it does seem to me that eternal security is a reliable principle. Having come to faith, I think my salvation is secure, but there's no doubt that there are passages in the Bible that make me doubt that position. And of course, there are some men who will claim that eternal security, the whole concept, is to be thrown out, which I don't agree with them, but still, and so on and so forth. And I mean, not think of eschatology, how many different positions we can find here. I take a post-millennial, preterist position broadly, but There are passages of the Bible that can be used to argue different positions. They're certainly there. I mean, the people that claim them, they're not stupid men. I think they're missing perhaps some important points, but it's not for me to say, is it? I mean, every man and every woman has to come to Christ just as they are and find truth in Jesus Christ. And then perhaps, we see through a glass darkly, as Paul says in Corinthians. And, when Christ returns, we will see clearly. But for the time being, I think I really don't find Christianity to be a dogma. It's far more nuanced and complex than that. So those are just my thoughts about dogma. I don't know whether anybody would like to chime in the comments, and I thank anybody who's listened, and I hope you all have a blessed and wonderful day. God bless you all.